Jacob stumbled through the dense jungle, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. The thick foliage was an impenetrable wall, the dark green leaves pressed so close together they seemed to swallow the faint light of the moon. He had been running for what felt like hours, each footfall echoing in the oppressive silence that seemed to have fallen over the jungle. Earlier that evening, Jacob had wandered away from his camping group, drawn by the lure of an old, moss-covered stone archway he had spotted in the distance. The archway was part of a forgotten ruin, rumored to be haunted by the spirits of those who had once lived in the jungle. His friends had laughed off the story, but Jacob had been intrigued. Now, as darkness enveloped the forest, that intrigue had curdled into a sense of dread. He had started hearing it just after he lost sight of the campfire, the sound of footsteps behind him, moving with a deliberate, unsettling rhythm. It wasn't just the sound of leaves rustling or branches snapping. These footsteps were too methodical, too precise. At first, Jacob thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him, but when he glanced back through the gloom, he saw nothing but shadows. A chill swept through him as he quickened his pace, the humid air growing colder with each step. The jungle seemed to close in around him, the canopy above becoming a dark, shifting mass. Every rustle of leaves and crack of twigs sent a jolt of fear through him. He tried to call out for his friends, but his voice came out as a hoarse whisper swallowed by the oppressive silence. Suddenly, he stumbled into a clearing, bathed in eerie moonlight. In the center of the clearing was the stone archway he had seen earlier, but now it looked different. Its weathered stones seemed to pulse with a strange, otherworldly energy. The air around it felt charged, heavy with a presence he couldn't quite place. Jacob approached the archway, driven by a mixture of curiosity and terror. As he stepped through it, the temperature dropped sharply. He shivered uncontrollably, and the footsteps behind him grew louder, closer. He turned, and for a moment, he saw a shadowy figure just beyond the edge of the clearing. Its shape was indistinct, but its eyes glowed with a malevolent light. Panic surged through Jacob. He spun back toward the archway, but now it seemed to shimmer and warp as if it were a mirage. He tried to retrace his steps, but the jungle had transformed. The path he had followed was gone, replaced by a labyrinth of unfamiliar trees and vines. The figure was closer now, and Jacob could hear its breath, slow, ragged, as if it was savoring his fear. Desperate, Jacob scrambled through the underbrush, his heart pounding in his chest. The jungle was no longer just a backdrop, but a living, breathing entity determined to trap him. He glanced back one last time and saw the figure emerging from the shadows, its eyes locking onto his, with an intensity that froze him in place. Jacob's scream was cut short as he felt a cold hand on his shoulder, dragging him into the darkness, where the jungle's whispers became a chorus of despairing cries. The jungle had claimed him, and as the moonlight faded, all that remained was the eerie silence and the haunting echo of footsteps.